Are you just looking for a way to pass the time? There are many options for you. Hello everyone, it's lovely to see you. I'm glad you're here. Over the last few years, I've recently gotten back into reading and sort of rediscovering what I'm interested in reading. And so today I wanted to talk about what are some tips and tricks for figuring out what you want to read next, especially if you're getting back into reading or you want to start reading and haven't read in a long time. Also, I mean reading for pleasure, if that wasn't clear. Reading for pleasure really is all about that, reading for pleasure. So if you read a bunch of books that you really don't like, it's not going to be that fun and you're not going to want to keep reading. The whole point of these tips moving forward as well is also to figure out what do you like, and let's start reading books that you're interested in rather than just trying things out you hate. It's probably not going to be that fun and you're probably going to want to stop. My first tip, and what I think is super helpful, is to look at what you already do in your free time. Do you like to watch movies and TV shows? Are you someone who likes to go on a hike? Do you like sports? Do you like to listen to podcasts, hang out with friends? What's something that's interesting to you that you do often and you choose to do? Also, what are some things that you don't like to do? Knowing what you already like and what you already do is a really helpful way to give yourself some insight on what you might like to read. Let's say, for example, you like to watch mystery shows about crime, but you want those crimes to be about real things that have happened, and you don't really like when you're watching something about a speculative crime or something that hasn't actually occurred. Maybe you'd be interested in nonfiction books about crime or something else, or nonfiction books in general, rather than a fiction book. Maybe you like sports. You might be interested in reading books that involve sports or have characters who are also heavily interested in sports, or you might be interested in nonfiction books that are about the history of sports, or memoirs or autobiographies about athletes who have played in those sports you're interested in. Playing off of what you already know are your interests is going to be so helpful in finding books that you like. That's that. Tip number one, look at what you already like and what you already don't like to try and help you weed out some different possibilities and think about things that maybe you hadn't thought about reading before, but you still enjoy, so you might be interested in. Next, what I would think about is, what is your goal with reading? Do you want to connect with people over the books you read? Do you want to learn about something that you either already really enjoy or you don't know that much about? Do you want to feel a certain way when you're finished with the book? Do you want to feel accomplished? As in, like, you read a mystery, you figure out what the mystery is, you feel accomplished. Maybe you want to laugh and you want to read some books that have like a humorous air to them or some comical elements. Maybe you want to feel sad and reflective. There are books like that. I've read many of them. They very much exist. Maybe you want to feel scared. Read a horror book. What is your goal with reading? What's important to you, and what do you want to do with that time spent reading? That's going to give you a direction of what you might be interested in reading next. Are you looking for escapism? Are you looking to escape your own life but into someone else's life that's generally plausible? I would recommend a contemporary fiction novel, as those are typically about people within our time period, but not necessarily you. If you're looking to escape our reality altogether, I would recommend high fantasy books, or really any fantasy book, depending on the extent of escapism you are looking for. Are you looking to learn more about the field you're in? Are you looking to learn about something new? What do you want? How much time do you have to read? When would you be reading, and how does that fit with your experience with reading? So for example, there could be two people who have very different times available to read and amount of time available to read, and they might enjoy reading the same book of the same length for different reasons. So let's say I'm someone who commutes to work. I have like a 30-minute commute on public transit or whatever, and I want to listen to my audiobook. I personally am someone who's going to forget what's going on when I'm reading a really long book that's really complicated. There's a lot going on. I'm going to likely forget about it. I don't mind having to go back a few minutes and get a little bit of a refresher, or try to think about who is this person, what do I know about them, I don't remember what's going on. But I know for many people this can be frustrating if you feel like every time you're picking up the book, you have to like restart and recalibrate. And so if you're one of those people, I would recommend reading something that's just like a simple, easy read, that's enjoyable, that you can just pick up and put down at any amount of times, and you know what's going on and you can feel like you understand the story. Additionally, maybe you're someone who has a lot of time to read and you just want to spend a lot of time just enjoying that book. You have like 4 hours in a row that you could read like on the weekend or something, and you just want to dive into something that's really complex. A longer, more complex book might be something that interests you. In addition, if you have a ton of time to read but you just want to read as many books as possible, maybe simpler or shorter books might be something that's good for you. I would think about, what do I like to spend my free time doing? How do I want to experience these books? What works for me and what doesn't work for me? Maybe you're someone who does want to read those more complex books, but it is frustrating too. Every time you pick up the book, you don't really know what's happening. I would recommend maybe giving yourself some time to leave some notes about that. If you have a physical copy, maybe your bookmark, you can have a piece of paper that you write like, this person just killed that guy and they're going off to this place to do this thing and retrieve that, and this guy is being really shady and all this stuff. And then that can be your bookmark, and just like a few sentences, you know, will jog your memory. You know you best. Or you could leave some notes on your phone about the same thing. And so when you're about to pick up the book next, you can read your few sentences, know where you are, and get ready to go. If you really want to read something but it doesn't seem like it works with your schedule, there is a way to do it. The only reason I recommend thinking about the time you have to read is because of your certain preferences with that amount of time and what you do. Personally, I listen to audiobooks on my commute to work in the morning, and then sometimes at lunch, and then in the evening, typically close-ish to bedtime or before bed. So I have some different preferences of what I'm reading based on the time of day. In the morning, I don't want to read anything that's super depressing, super hard. I don't really want to start my day that way. So I try to start with something that has like, that's a little lighter, has a little more of a comedic air, or like something that I'm just really interested in and want to know what's happening more. At lunchtime, that's typically when I might read my scarier books or just anything else. The middle of the day to me is kind of whatever, anything can happen. But then before bedtime, that's the time when I will not be reading scary books. I will not sleep, it will not work out for me. I really like to read those like scarier books, those thrillers, I guess. I don't read anything super terrifying, but either way, it's not gonna work out for me to read those before bed. So knowing that, if I only had time to read before bed, I probably wouldn't read that many scary books. But since I have other times in the day I can read those things, then I do pick up those books. And so that's just something to think about. How do those times and the amount of time you have affect your lifestyle and what you want to read during those times of day or days of the week, what have you. So I'd encourage you, if you're like, the only times I have to read books, I have to spend cleaning my house. Maybe you could turn on an audiobook, put some headphones in, and enjoy reading and also clean your house. Lastly, I would consider, why don't you read right now? And what does that tell you about what kinds of books you might like to read, or just what's going on in general? Let's say that your reason is, I just don't have time right now. Maybe there's a different format of book you could read, such as audiobook or ebook, where you can always take it with you and you always have it available. And maybe that will help you find more time to read what you want to read. If your answer is, I just can't find any genre that works for me, or I read this really bad book this one time and I don't ever want to read again, I would recommend doing what I like to call a taste test for your books. If you're really lost and you really just don't know what genre to read, even after thinking about some of the tips I provided before, what I would recommend doing is doing a little taste test. If you can do this in a way that doesn't impact you greatly financially, I would recommend doing that. So what you will do is find each genre that seems vaguely interesting to you, or like each subject matter, if you will. and then pick one book that sounds interesting from that genre, that subject, and then you're gonna read about 30 minutes to an hour of that book. I say that because that's the time for me where it's about the hour mark where I recognize this is not a book for me. If like the first hour doesn't work out for me, I'm probably not going to finish the book because it's just not going to be a fun time, and I don't want to spend however many more hours reading that book. This can be different for each book. For some books that are really short, an hour might be like 50% of the way through the book, and so you're going to want to find your own metric and what works for you. The reason I recommend just trying them, and if you don't like them, stopping, is because books are not going to go anywhere. That book will still exist in the future. Stopping reading that book right now is probably not going to impact your future self's ability to read that book. You don't have to treat it as like a limited resource, as like, I have this book right now and this is the only time I can read it, and never again will this opportunity ever arise for me. It might not, but likely if you want to read that book in the future, you're going to be able to read that book in the future. And additionally, reading a book, at least for me, is a huge time investment. It takes a lot of time. You get really invested in the book, and if you don't like it, it's really just not that fun. And I don't want to spend my free hours reading books I hate just to read them. There are sometimes more reasons to read them, even if you don't necessarily enjoy them. There's some like nonfiction books that I think are personally important for me to read, even if it's not a fun time reading them. If I'm reading for pleasure and my goal with reading that book is for it to be enjoyable, then if it's not making me feel I'm not enjoying it for any reason within the first hour, she's out of here. I'm not doing it. I'm done. So I would do those taste tests, and then theoretically you'll find some elements that you like within some of those books. Maybe you won't like every one. Like, let's say maybe you read like a thriller and you're just like, I'm not interested in this whole like thriller dynamic, but I really liked the characters. That's telling you something, that you do enjoy certain aspects of reading. You just haven't found all of them yet. And so that can be really encouraging to know, I do enjoy reading. There is reading out there for me. It's not all boring and it's not all like bad. There's books out there for you. I know it. There's books out there for everyone. I know this video was really broad and just gave you a lot of things to think about and consider without giving you actual book recommendations. And so I'm thinking in the future of if people have some specific book requests, that we can do something like that to recommend specific books to people. But I know for a fact that people who are on BookTube and watch BookTube love to recommend books. If you are still really lost, you don't really know, or you're just looking for something new because you haven't read in a while, you're looking for something different, you don't like the books you used to like, leave a comment down below with just some general things you enjoy, and let's help each other out. Let's share some books. It's always a fun thing to do. To wrap this up, the tips I provided were think about the things that you already enjoy and the things that you don't enjoy, especially pertaining to entertainment like movies, TV shows, sports, etc. Number 2 I talked about was, what's your goal with reading? How do you want to feel? What do you want to get out of it? And essentially just, what do you want to spend your time reading doing? What are you getting out of that? The third thing I talked about is, what time do you have to read and how do you interact with that time and those specific times? And then the last thing I talked about, why don't you read right now? What is the thing that's keeping you from reading? Are you really busy? Do you just not like the books that you've read in the past? You just didn't read for the last year? Or you've never read, but you're interested in reading and you want to see what's out there? Okay, I'll just say, don't worry about what other people like, and just worry about what you might like. There are many people who will like similar things to you, and that can help you find some new books that you're really going to enjoy. But if you don't like the latest book talk trend or the biggest book on BookTube, that's okay. It's not for you, and that's fine. There are so many books by so many authors and there is something that's out there for you. And just because the most popular thing is not for you is fine. There's so many other books just waiting for you. So I hope that you find your next book to read. If you have any questions, if you have any tips, if you have anything you want to add, or you're really looking for some specific type of book, leave a comment. We all love to chat about it, and I'm excited to hear what people have to say. I hope you have a good week. I hope you have a good time. And most of all, I hope that you read a good book. Okay, goodbye.